This has to be the most crucial start sit video I am going to be making all season here, going into the first week of the fantasy football playoffs. I'm bringing you my must start and sit wide receivers going into week 15 of the fantasy football season. So let's not waste any more time and get straight into it. All right, starting off with our Thursday night game here. Chargers at the Las Vegas Raiders. Over under is 33.5 in favor of the Las Vegas Raiders here. And obviously, the reason why that being is because Justin Herbert is out for the season with that fractured finger. It's not that best outlook anymore for the Los Angeles Chargers. But look, in the running back position, Austin Eckler, in my personal opinion, is a must-start. Does have a phenomenal bounce-back game after the last 3 weeks. He has been struggling. 10 tokes on the ground, 51 yards, but caught 5 out of 7 opportunities. He did score a touchdown, 21 fantasy points, and that's exactly the Austin Eckler we all know and love. So you start him with confidence, as the Las Vegas Raiders do give up a good amount of points to the running back position when you adjust for schedule. And now on the Raiders side of the ball, Josh Jacobs is the one dealing with an injury. He did not practice on Monday and on Tuesday. So that is definitely something that could be something we're going to have to monitor. Now you're asking me, okay, who's going to be the backup, right? Ameer Abdullah or Zamir White? I'm honestly not sure who is going to be the backup. And if you do have Josh Jacobs and don't have anyone else, and there's going to be somebody you're going to have to be picking up, either Abdullah White or Zamir White, Abdullah or Amir Abdullah or Zamir White, I am not confident telling you to start these guys going into the playoff week in week 15. This is more of a risky start for me. I would say if Josh Jacobs doesn't play, and there's reports saying, the Raiders offense is going to be leaning on one of the other these running backs, then maybe we can have a different conversation. But at the very moment, it is a risky start moving forward if we do not hear that report. All right, going into our next matchup, 1 out of 3 Saturday night games. So keep that in mind as we are going into the playoffs. Make sure you plan accordingly. The Minnesota Vikings at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are favored coming into this game. 39.5 is the over-under. Josh Dobbs does get benched for Nick Mullins. What does that mean for either one of these Vikings running backs? I'm not necessarily sure, but we're going to wait and see what that looks like coming into this first Saturday night matchup. And Alexander Mattison here did not practice coming in on Tuesday, and I know he was questionable with all these injuries that he's been dealing with, which has been an ankle injury. This past week against the Raiders, caught 10 tokes on the ground, 66 yards. So he was averaging a decent amount on the ground. They just couldn't score. They couldn't capitalize on those opportunities there, and that's not somebody or anyone that I'm willing just tell you to start with confidence. This is why he's a spot start. There are better options out there for you. Same thing has to be said with Ty Chandler. If you're saying, okay, well, Alexander Mattison potentially could not play coming into this week if he does continue not to practice throughout this week. Ty Chandler coming in with 12 tokes, 35 yards, caught 3 out of 3 opportunities in the air, 56% of the snap share. A risky start going into this matchup if Alexander Mattison doesn't start here. And the only confident matchup you can go, or running back that you can start in this matchup here on this Saturday night, is Joe Moneybag Mixon. RB6 so far on the year, has been seeing a massive uptick in production. And this is one of the things I've kind of been telling you guys to do when I was telling you guys to trade for him early in the middle of the season while he was struggling before that bye week. He finds his touchdowns at the end of the season, the second half of the season during his bye week. These last 2 games, 29 fantasy points and then 21 fantasy points. I mean, he has been absolutely tearing it up. Now the Minnesota Vikings don't give up actually a lot of points to the running back position. But what I do know is that Joe Mixon does get a lot of opportunities, and that's exactly what you want to see here going into this Saturday night matchup. All right, our second Saturday night matchup coming into this week, Steelers at the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are favored coming into this game. 42 is the over-under, once again in favor of the Colts. Let's start off with the Steelers side of the ball here. There's not either one of these running backs I can tell you to start with confidence going into this playoff matchup. But if you are struggling with injuries, whatever the case may be, both Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris are spot starts. But what is the most interesting thing is that Najee Harris does sit out of practice this week with that knee injury. And we've seen how Jaylen Warren has been successful with these opportunities when he is given the keys to this backfield. And if that is the case, Jaylen Warren could potentially go step into potentially a must start if Najee Harris doesn't practice or, play going into the Saturday night game. Is technically a short week, right? So look, they're still splitting the backfield, 57% of the snap share last week against New England versus 53 for Jaylen Warren. It's back-to-back here. So keep that in mind when you are going into this matchup. Both of these guys are going to be spot starts. And now Zach Moss coming into this week. He's still getting the opportunities in the air. Caught 4 out of 8 targets, under 10 fantasy points against the Cincinnati Bengals this past week. But, when you look at schedule adjusted points for against running backs, the Steelers currently give up the most points to the running back position. Obviously, the situation fluctuates, but the Pittsburgh Steelers are pretty up there when they're giving up points. They just gave up over 22 points, if I'm not mistaken, to Ezekiel Elliott last week. So Zach Moss is a must-start going into this week. All right, our last Saturday night matchup. This one, I would say, is probably the best matchup for going into this Saturday here. Broncos at the Detroit Lions here. Over under is 46.5 in favor of the Detroit Lions. And coming into this week on the Broncos side of the ball, my only must-start coming in is Javonte Williams. 17 tokes on the ground, 66 yards and a touchdown, 18 fantasy points against Los Angeles Chargers. Now the Lions are a tougher matchup when it goes against the run. They do give up, the 10th fewest points to the running back position. But look, Javonte Williams has been getting the opportunity. 10 points week 12, 10 points in week 13, 18 points in week 14 against the Chargers. Hopefully he gets that good safe floor at a 10-point minimum coming into this week. Jaleel McLaughlin and Samaje Perine, I am not starting. And keep it simple. Stupid, the acronym that we like to love, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Dave Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are both must-starts coming into this week. Obviously, they are splitting this backfield here, but both of these guys should have a good amount of opportunity here, as the Denver Broncos do give up the 7th most points to the running back position coming into this Saturday night matchup. All right, our next divisional matchup here, Falcons at the Carolina Panthers here. The Falcons are favored coming into this game with the over-under being 34.5. And obviously, you're going to be starting Bijan Robinson here. Currently, RB8 sees 10 tokes, caught 5 out of 7 opportunities in the air, 54 yards. He does find the end zone for over 19 fantasy points. And he's been doing his thing, exactly what we were hoping for all off season. And he's going against the Carolina Panthers, who currently give up the 8th most points to the running back position. His teammate, his backup there in Tyler Algier, I am not starting with confidence whatsoever, as we have been seeing the downfall in production and opportunity there. So you don't start Tyler Algier whatsoever. And the only person on the other side in this matchup that I do want to be thinking about starting is going to be Chuba Hubbard here. We saw him, just come out of a 25 game against New Orleans Saints here. 23 attempts on the ground, 87 yards, 3.7 yards per carry. But the week before against Tampa Bay, 25 opportunities, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, over 22 fantasy points. Now, the Atlanta Falcons are pretty good against the run, but something that we have to keep in mind that this is a divisional game, and they are clearly wanting to give Chuba Hubbard the ball on the ground. So if you do need a running back here, Chuba Hubbard could be a decent spot start for you going into week 15. All right, continuing with our matchups here, the Bears at the Cleveland Browns. 37.5 is the over under here in favor of the Browns and Joe Flacco here. On the Bears side of the ball, this is a shaky backfield here. Khalil Herbert, Deontay Foreman, and Rashawn Johnson. Who can I tell you to start? Who can you trust? There's no one here I want to trust going into week 15 of the playoffs. I look at this lineup here and I say, okay, Khalil Herbert, 17% of the snaps with only 3 attempts on the ground. Deontay Foreman, 55% of the snaps against Detroit this past week, 11 tokes on the ground. Rashawn Johnson here, only 1 opportunity on the ground with 28% of the snap share. This is a 3-way monster. This is not an offense in a running back room that I want to invest in here. So especially when you look at the Cleveland Browns, who are decent against the run and who have been really good against all opposing fantasy opponents coming into this year, I'm still want to, stray away from these running backs. I do have Khalil Herbert and Deontay Foreman as risky starts because either one of these guys could find the end zone at any point in time. Either one of these guys could take it to the house for, however many yards on a screen, right? So keep that in mind there. Don't love the starts and don't love the matchup here. This is why both of those guys are a risky start. And then Kareem Hunt on the other side of the ball and Jerome Ford are both spot starts here. Both of these guys have been up and down. Kareem Hunt, 10 opportunities, 37% of snap share, 10 fantasy points. Jerome Ford does get injured in this game. He does have a hand injury, but look, caught 5 out of 6 opportunities, 31 yards, 12 tokes on the ground, 13 fantasy points. He has been a very mid, running back. If you're looking for 11, 10, 12, 13 fantasy points, Jerome Ford has been so consistent that the last time he scored under a double-digit fantasy points was in week 8. So he has been really good so far coming off that bye week in week 5, especially when Nick Chubb went down. So Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford are both spot starts for me. All right, continuing with our matchups here. Bucks at the Green Bay Packers. In favor of the Green Bay Packers, over-under is 41.5. And starting off with the Bucks side of the ball, Rachaad White, RB4, currently on the season. You are starting here with confidence because he is getting peppered in the air and he is getting opportunities on the ground. 15 tokes in week 12, 20 opportunities in week 13, 25 carries in week 14. That's not even including what he has done in the air. Keep that in mind. Rachaad White is the only really confident player I'm starting going into this matchup here. And on the Green Bay side of the ball, Aaron Jones has been risky, has been getting, been practicing up and down throughout the week of last week. I'm pretty sure that's going to be the exact same thing this week. If he is ready, if he is going to start, I still deem him as a risky start. We've seen him come back from these injuries, have an injured week, have a bye week, come back and still produce under double-digit fantasy points. There's no way that I'm trusting Aaron Jones, even with I know how talented he is, especially when he gets all these opportunities, that I should be starting him going into week 15, especially in the fantasy playoffs. And the same has to be said with A.J. Dillon. If anything, he is more, I guess he is a step up in the risky spot department. I would say this: if Aaron Jones is there, I'm still considering starting A.J. Dillon, which sounds crazy because his floor has been safer, right? 10 fantasy points in week 11, 10 fantasy points in week 12, 9 fantasy points in week 13, 9 fantasy points this past week on Monday night against the Giants in week 14. So, that's exactly what I would want to be doing, a safer floor rather than, yes, I guess the higher upside with Aaron Jones, but we haven't seen that. Only 2 games over double digits for Aaron Jones. That was in week 1 and in week 9 against the Rams. So both of these guys are a risky start going into this week. All right, another divisional matchup here going to the AFC. The Jets at the Miami Dolphins. The over-under is 40 in favor of the Miami Dolphins, of course. The Jets did win. Maybe they can pull up another upset to the Miami Dolphins, especially if Tyreek Hill doesn't play. But at the running back side of the ball here, the one on the Jets side, Breece Hall is a must-start coming into this game. He has been getting peppered with targets in the last 4 games of the season so far. 5 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets, 8 targets. Excuse me, those are receptions. So 6 targets, 9 targets, 8 targets, and 9 targets. He is getting work in the air, and that's exactly what you want to be seeing. He's currently RB9. For a guy that tore his ACL last year, he has been breaking the mold so far when it comes down to those guys. And on the other side of the ball, Devon Achane here is getting 12 fantasy points against the Tennessee Titans, where Raheem Mostert does find the end zone with 21 opportunities, just under 100 yards, 23 fantasy points. Raheem Mostert, Raheem the Dream, is doing his thing here, and especially against the New York Jets, who currently give up the 5th most points to the running back position. Both Devon and Raheem could have a field day going into this week. All right, going into our next matchup here, my beloved New York Football Giants versus the New Orleans Saints here. Another incredible game, especially because Tommy Cutlets is dueling it up in New York here. Something special is happening. The over-under is 37 in favor of the New Orleans Saints, which is absolutely fair. And let's start off with the Giants side of the ball here. Saquon Barkley doing something special. 20 attempts, 86 yards, 2 touchdowns, 23 fantasy points. He does find the end zone twice in those games. I mean, finally scores a touchdown on the ground in weeks, to be completely honest with you. I think since week 1 or week 2, where he scored that touchdown against the Arizona Cardinals, the last time he found the end zone on the ground. On the other side of the ball here, Alvin Kamara is continuing to do his thing, RB5. He gets peppered with targets, and that's exactly what's going to happen here going into this week for Alvin Kamara. Let's keep this one short and sweet. Saquon Barkley and Alvin Kamara are the 2 running backs here starting going into this matchup. All right, another good matchup here, still in the 1 p.m. slate games. The Houston Texans at the Tennessee Titans, a great divisional matchup here. If CJ Stroud does play this game, this could be a very interesting game here with Will Levis and CJ Stroud. The over-under is 37.5 in favor currently of the Tennessee Titans, excuse me. I think that is going to change if CJ Stroud does play. On the Texans side of the ball, it's been a bit shaky, but Devin Singletary is now a risky start for me. A lot of inconsistencies in these past weeks. He has been splitting the backfield with Dameon Pierce, but he is the one who has been finding the end zone at some time. Same thing with Dameon Pierce. He's found the end zone last week, but still only 4 opportunities this past week against the New York Jets. I was expecting a better outcome there for Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce, as the Jets did give up a lot of points to the running back position. Going to the Titans side of the ball, Derrick Henry is a must-start coming in to this week here. 17 attempts on the ground, 34 yards on 17 attempts is not great, with averaging 2 yards per carry, but he does find the end zone twice, which really does save his day here coming into this week. But going against the Houston Texans, who are in the middle of a pack defense, potentially he can see that, especially if CJ Stroud doesn't play this week. And Tyjae Spears as spot start. I will be starting Tyjae Spears over Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce if CJ Stroud doesn't play, because the last 2 weeks for Tyjae, 12 fantasy points, but caught 6 out of 4 targets, 16 tokes on the ground for 75 yards in week 13. Week 14, caught 6 out of 8 targets, 89 yards, had 17 tokes on the ground for 27 yards, over 16 fantasy points. If you do need another spot running back, hey, Tyjae Spears could be somebody you can start going into week 15. All right, in our last 1 p.m. slate game here, the Kansas City Chiefs at the New England Patriots. Over under is 37 in favor of the Kansas City Chiefs, excuse me. Obviously, let's keep this one short and sweet. Isaiah Pacheco, if he does play, you start him. He's not expected to go on IR, but he has been up and down in practice so far. So if he does miss another game, as you can see, I have Jet McKinnon as somebody that you can plug and play. I'd rather have Jet over Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He gets opportunities in the air. He does find the end zone this past week against Buffalo, over 12 fantasy points. So if Isaiah doesn't start, Jet McKinnon is somebody I'm willing to start here as a spot start, of course. And then on the New England Patriots side of the ball, not somebody I'm excited or expecting to have a good game, especially off of that 27-point game he had against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but Ezekiel Elliott, a spot start coming into this week. All right, another divisional matchup in our first afternoon slate games here. The San Francisco 49ers at the Arizona Cardinals here. Christian McCaffrey, of course, is a must start. By the way, the over-under is 47.5 in favor of the San Francisco 49ers, but Christian McCaffrey, you start with confidence. And then on the other side of the ball for the Arizona Cardinals is James Conner. He does have a good bounce back game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, in week 13 before his bye week. 25 attempts, 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Can he do that against San Francisco 49ers? I'm not confident. This is why he's a spot start. There could be better opportunities out there for you going into this week. All right, our next afternoon slate game here, Washington at the Los Angeles Rams. The over-under is 48.5, our second highest over-under of this week here in favor of the Los Angeles Rams. Brian Robinson, if he does come back from this injury and if he does play after this bye week in week 15, I am starting Brian Robinson in as a spot start. There are other better opportunities, but if he is there and starting, it's hard not to start him, especially the way he has been getting the work in the air. Now on the Rams side of the ball, the only person you start here is Kyren Williams, who is picking up right where he left off as RB11, getting the opportunities in the air and on the ground, especially against those Washington teams who currently give up the second most points to the running back position. You start him with confidence going into this week. Okay, and our last afternoon slate games before we get into Sunday night and Monday night, the Dallas Cowboys at the Buffalo Bills. This should be a great game in favor of the Dallas Cowboys here. At the moment, obviously, a lot of things can change. 48.5 is the over-under. That means our second, right? I said we saw that last game here, this last matchup with the Rams and Washington. Now the Bills and the Dallas Cowboys are our second over-under here. Tony Pollard, you start. Going into the Bills seem like a tougher matchup, but they currently give up the 9th most fantasy points to the running back position. And James Cook, I am still starting with confidence, especially with the opportunities he's gotten in the air and on the ground. I know it's a tough defense. I know it's a tough matchup, but they still need to get mixy here with James Cook if they want to do anything, especially this game is at home as well. So Tony Pollard and James Cook are the two running backs I'm starting in this matchup. All right, going into our Sunday night matchup here, Baltimore Ravens at the Jacksonville Jaguars here. The Ravens are favored to win with 43.5, is the over-under. Starting off at the Ravens side of the ball here, Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell has been seeing a little bit of a rotation. I don't love how inconsistent this backfield has been personally. So both of these guys are risky starts. I know there have been reports saying Keaton Mitchell is getting more and more opportunities, but Gus Edwards is not, but they both haven't been producing. So I can't tell you to start either one of these guys with confidence, in my personal opinion. And on the Jag side of the ball, Travis Etienne, still a top 3 running back here, getting opportunities. No matter if this matchup is a tough one, I'm still starting Travis Etienne. All right, let's keep this one short and sweet on the Monday night game here. Philadelphia Eagles at the Seattle Seahawks, in favor of the Eagles here. 48 is the over-under. DeAndre Swift is the one that you want to start coming into this matchup here. He's been getting opportunities. He's been getting a little bit slower, but I think he should pick up here as the Seattle Seahawks do give up the 4th most fantasy points to the running back position. And then Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet are both spot starts here, and risky starts, I would say, at that, because of all the question marks coming in to this matchup as well with that running back room. Guys, those are all the running backs that are going into week 15 into the playoffs. I hope and wish you good luck. And as always, it's all love.
Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.